Peace be unto you. My topic today is entitled The Sad Thing About Sodom. And my text is taken from Genesis 19, verses 27 to 28. The ancient cities of Sodom and Gomorrah shall forever live in infamy. The very mention of their names recall thoughts of hellish depravity and horrible destruction, the latter being the result of the former. They stand in biblical history as the very epitome of God's hatred for sin and his judgment upon the sinner. First, the streets of Sodom. It was a city where sin was a prevalent thing. Genesis 13, verse 13, Isaiah 3, verse 9a. Raw sin was the norm in Sodom. B, it was a city where the sin was a polluted thing. Sodom was a sinfully polluted place. Lot knew that, and that was the reason he would not take no for an answer after having invited the angel to spend the night in his house. In verse 5, the word no, as used here, refers to sexual knowledge. This was blatant homosexuality in progress. Unfortunately, Lot feared that something like this might happen in the first place. That is why he was so vehement about the visitors staying the night in his house instead of in the streets. Verse 8, see, it was a city where sin was a persistent thing. 1, the men of Sodom were not dissuaded by Lot's oratory. Genesis 19, verses 6 to 7. Notice how cautious Lot was when he went out to talk to this mob. He was careful to shut the door after him. Verse 6. Lot had been in Sodom long enough to know what kind of men these were and the kind of violence they were capable of. He knew exactly what this bunch had in mind. Notice how Lot tried to use diplomacy on this lustrous crowd. He even called this bunch brethren. Verse 7. How Lot's values had changed since coming to Sodom. Friends, when you hang out in the pig pen, you are bound to begin to stink sooner or later. Verse 2. They were not dissuaded by his lurid offer. Genesis 19:8. Lot was willing to give up his 2 virgin daughters. 3. They were not dissuaded by his language objection. Genesis 19b. These men mocked Lot and had no respect for him. 4. They were not dissuaded by their lustful obscurity. Genesis 9, verses 10 to 11. Even after the angel struck this crowd with blindness, they still wore themselves out trying to find the door. This tells us how darkened their hearts were. Sin always results in spiritual darkness. Romans 1:21, Ephesians 4:18 to 19. There is a principle here that is often overlooked. When a person violates their conscience so long that their sin no longer bothers them, they are in danger of quick and severe judgment. B, it was a city where sin was a pernicious thing. Genesis 19:9. The point is, these people were ready to fight anybody who tried to deny them the free expression of their depraved lust. E, it was a city where sin was a punishable thing. Genesis 19, verses 12 to 13. Secondly, the tragedy of Sodom. Lot had no testimony with the lost. 1, he had gained prominence in a city of perversion. Genesis 19:1a. The men that sat in the gate of the city were those prominent men who helped met out justice in the people. 2, Lot's moral had been Lot's marriage had become exceedingly perverse. Genesis 19:8. This will happen when professed Christians are not separated from the world. 3. The men of Sodom view Lot as a hypocritical person. Genesis 19:98. Lot had lived among the Sodomites for too long. They saw him for what he really was, a hypocrite. B. Lot had no testimony with those he loved. Genesis 19:14. Lot became a joke with his sons-in-law even when judgment was pending. Thirdly, the termination of Sodom. A. The wicked perish. Genesis 19:24 to 25. You cannot get away with sin unless there is repentance. B. Lot was protected. Genesis 19:29. Lot had to be pulled out of those depraved cities. Genesis 19:16. Lingering can be dangerous for the child of God. It could be a sign of compromise and our backslidden condition. In closing, God condemns homosexual conduct in the same context as he condemns incest and bestiality, as in Leviticus 18:22, chapter 20, verse 13.